The Aldermoor Inn. You almost didn't stop. The road had been empty for 2 hours. Just wet asphalt and pine trees and the kind of rain that doesn't fall so much as hang in the air, turning your headlights into soft, blurred halos. Your phone had lost signal somewhere around the mountain pass. The GPS had simply given up, its screen frozen on a road that no longer matched the one beneath your tyres. And then you saw it, set back from the road, barely visible through the trees. A light, warm and amber, and completely out of place in the middle of nowhere. As you slowed down, more of it came into view. A building, wide and low, with a covered entrance, and window boxes full of white flowers that somehow hadn't been touched by the rain. A wooden sign hung above the door, swaying gently. The Aldermoor Inn. You had never heard of it. You had never seen it on any map. But every part of you, the tired part, the cold part, the part that had been driving too long and thinking too hard, said, stop. So you did. The gravel crunched under your feet as you stepped out of the car. The rain fell softer here, barely more than a mist.
The air smelled of wood smoke and wet earth, and something sweet, jasmine maybe, or honeysuckle, drifting from somewhere you couldn't see. The front door was heavy oak, warm to the touch, and it opened before you could knock. A woman stood in the entrance. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pinned loosely at her neck and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She wore a dark green cardigan and the expression of someone who had been expecting you and wasn't particularly surprised that it had taken you this long to arrive. "Terrible night to be on the mountain road," she said. Not as a question. "I got a little lost," you admitted. She smiled at that, a small, knowing smile, and stepped aside to let you in. Most people who find us do. The lobby of the Aldermoor Inn was everything the road outside was not. Deep armchairs in burgundy and forest green gathered around a fireplace so large you could have stood inside it. The fire itself was extraordinary. Not the aggressive, crackling kind, but a slow and generous burn that filled the room with a light that seemed to move like water, warm and liquid and alive. Bookshelves lined every wall, filled with volumes that looked genuinely red. Spines cracked, pages soft, a few lying open and face down, as though someone had just stepped away. A grandfather clock in the corner ticked, with the unhurried confidence of something that had never once been in a hurry. The woman, her name was Margaret, she told you. The inn had been in her family for 3 generations. She led you to the front desk and handed you a key, attached to a smooth piece of dark wood, engraved with the number 7. "Room 7, she said. "End of the hall, last door on the left. It's our quietest room." She looked at you for a moment. "You look like you need quiet." You took the key. It was heavier than you expected. "Is there anything to eat?" you asked. You hadn't realised how hungry you were until the smell of something warm reached you from somewhere deeper in the building. "Soup," Margaret said simply. "Sit by the fire. I'll bring it." You sat. The armchair received you the way a good armchair should, fully, without reservation, as though it had been shaped specifically for you. The fire popped softly. Rain tapped against the tall windows in an irregular, soothing rhythm. Never loud enough to startle, just present enough to remind you that you were inside and warm, and that the world beyond the glass was someone else's concern tonight. A cat appeared from nowhere. Grey, large, with the slow blinking eyes of an animal that has decided you are trustworthy. It settled on the arm of your chair without asking permission. You let your head rest back. The ceiling above you was dark wood, crossed with old beams. Someone had hung small glass lanterns from them at different heights, and they caught the firelight and scattered it in long, slow gleams across the room. You watched one gleam travel from one side of the ceiling to the other, and then back again, carried by some draught you couldn't feel. Back and forth, back and forth. Your eyelids felt heavier than they had in months. Margaret returned with a bowl of soup, potato and leek, thick and steaming, and a heel of dark bread, and a small pot of butter. She set it on the side table without a word, and disappeared again before you could thank her. You ate slowly. The soup was extraordinary, in the way that only simple food made with genuine care can be extraordinary. Each spoonful was warm all the way down. You felt it spreading through you, through your chest, your stomach, your hands, all the way to your feet. The hunger dissolved, and with it, something else, something tighter and older than hunger. The particular exhaustion of a person who has been carrying too much for too long without setting any of it down. You set it down now, just for tonight, just here, in this chair, in this inn that appeared from nowhere, on a road that went nowhere, in the rain. The cat shifted and began to purr. The clock ticked. The fire breathed. You were almost asleep in the chair when Margaret came back. She didn't say anything at first, just collected the empty bowl and the bread plate with quiet efficiency. The way someone moves when they have learned not to disturb things that are finally at rest. But you stirred, and she paused. And for a moment the two of you simply existed in the firelight together. "How long has the inn been here?" you asked. Your voice came out softer than you intended, lower. Sleep had already started to pull at its edges. Margaret set the tray down and settled into the chair across from you.
Not perching, not visiting, but settling, the way someone does when they have all the time there is. "My grandmother opened it," she said. 1947, just after the war. She said people needed somewhere to arrive at, somewhere that wasn't damaged. She looked at the fire for a moment. She built it for people who were tired she said. Really tired, not just sleepy. The kind of tired that gets into your bones and stays there. You understood that kind of tired. Is she still? She died when I was 12, Margaret said. But I think she's still here, in a way, in the way the place feels. You can't build something with that much intention and have it just disappear when you do. The fire settled. A log shifted, sending up a slow cascade of orange sparks that rose and cooled and vanished before they reached the dark beams above. Do you get many guests? You asked. Enough, she said. Not too many. The ones who need it, find it. She smiled then, the same small knowing smile she had given you at the door. You found it, didn't you? You didn't answer, but you both knew you had. Margaret walked you up the stairs herself.
The staircase was wide and unhurried, its banister smooth and dark from decades of hands. The wood of each step had worn slightly concave in the centre, the impression of all those feet, all those good nights, all those people climbing towards rest. You ran your fingers along the banister as you went, feeling the grain of it, the warmth the wood had collected from the house around it. The first floor landing opened onto a corridor that smelled of beeswax and old paper. A row of watercolour paintings lined the wall, landscapes rendered in soft washes of green and grey and blue, a lake at dusk, a hillside in fog, a harbour with still water and a single boat, each one framed in thin dark wood, each one hung at exactly the same height, with the care of someone who believed that small things, done properly, mattered. My mother painted those, Margaret said. She said painting landscapes was the closest thing to being inside them. You stopped at the harbour painting. The water in it was so still it looked more like silver than blue, a perfect mirror for a sky that was just beginning to lighten at the horizon, as though dawn was considering arriving, but hadn't decided yet.
You could almost hear the silence in it. She was right, you said. Margaret made a sound that might have been agreement, or satisfaction, or both. Then she continued up to the second floor, and you followed. Room 7 was at the end of a long hallway, lined with framed botanical illustrations, pressed wildflowers and ferns, and ink drawings of plants you didn't recognize, each one labelled in careful handwriting. You walked slowly, reading the names as you passed. Moonwort, Shepherd's Purse, Lady's Bedstraw. The names themselves were like a small poem, soft and strange, and oddly comforting. Margaret stopped at the last door and turned the handle without using a key. She pushed it open and reached inside to switch on the lamp, and a room came into warm amber life. Everything you need is here, she said. Extra blankets in the wardrobe if you get cold. The window sticks a little if you want to open it. Just lift and push at the same time. She paused at the threshold. Sleep well, she said. It didn't sound like a pleasantry. It sounded like something she meant, specifically for you. Thank you, you said, for all of it, the soup and the fire and... That's what the inn is for, she said simply. And then she was gone.
Her footsteps quiet down the hall, and you were alone in the warm amber light of room 7. The room was simple, a wide bed with a white iron frame made up in layers of white linen and a heavy quilt in deep blue, a small writing desk, a lamp with a warm amber bulb, and a window seat padded in the same dark green as Margaret's cardigan, overlooking the garden below. You stood at the window for a moment. The rain had softened to almost nothing now, just a fine shimmer in the air, catching the light from the inn's exterior lamp. The garden was wild and overgrown in a way that felt intentional. Roses gone slightly leggy, lavender spilling over the stone path, a bird bath filled to the brim, and perfectly still. Everything was perfectly still. You noticed on the writing desk that someone had left a small glass of water and a single sprig of dried lavender in a thin ceramic vase. The lavender was the colour of faded dusk, not purple anymore, but something between purple and grey, soft and dry, and faintly, beautifully fragrant. You touched one of the small flowers with your fingertip. It held its shape. You changed slowly.
The room was warm enough that the air against your skin felt gentle rather than cold. You folded your clothes over the back of the chair, the way you do when you are somewhere that deserves that kind of care. Not dropped, not thrown, but placed. The room seemed like the kind of place that had been treated carefully for a very long time, and had, in return, learned to hold things gently. You pulled back the layers of the bed and climbed in. The sheets were cool, and then immediately, gently warm. The kind of warmth that seems to come from the bed itself, rather than from you, as though it had been waiting to offer it. The pillow was deep and soft, and smelled faintly of lavender. Real lavender, not artificial. The kind that smells almost green as well as floral. The kind that smells like it was growing somewhere not long ago, and hasn't entirely forgotten it. You lay on your back and looked at the ceiling. It was white, simple, crossed by a single dark wooden beam. A small water stain near the corner had been there long enough to become part of the room's character rather than a flaw. Pale brown, vaguely leaf-shaped, perfectly harmless. You looked at it for a moment.
Then your eyes drifted to the beam, then to the lamp's warm circle on the far wall, then back to the ceiling. The window was cracked slightly open, just enough to let the very end of the rain in, softened to almost nothing now, barely more than cool, damp air moving slowly through the room. It smelled of wet stone and night earth and the lavender from the garden below. And it moved across your face with the gentleness of something that has no intention of disturbing anything. You breathed it in and out. Outside, the last of the rain fell. It fell on the garden and the bird bath and the stone path and the leggy roses. It fell on the gravel of the car park where your car sat quietly, still warm from the drive. It fell on the wooden sign above the door, the Aldermoor Inn. And it fell on the white flowers in the window boxes, which received it without complaint, as they had received everything. Inside, the inn settled into its nighttime self. The fire in the lobby had burned down to a deep red flow, not out, never quite out, just resting.
The cat had found a particular cushion on a particular chair and arranged itself into a perfect circle, its breathing slow and even. The grandfather clock continued its patient work, marking each second the same as the last, unhurried and unimpressed by the lateness of the hour. Upstairs, in the corridor outside your room, the botanical illustrations hung in the dark. Moonwort, shepherd's purse, lady's bedstraw, all those careful names,
all that careful handwriting. Preserved. Held. You thought briefly about tomorrow, about the road, about the things waiting for you at the end of it, but the thoughts had no grip tonight. They rose and drifted like smoke, shapeless and slow, and before any of them could form into something sharp enough to hold your attention, they were already gone. Not solved, just set down, released, left at the door of this room, the way you left your wet jacket on the chair, because this room does not require you to carry anything. You noticed your breathing had slowed without you asking it to. In, long and full, your chest rising gently, the cool lavender air moving through you from the very top of your lungs to the very bottom. Out, slow and complete, your body easing just a little further into the mattress with each exhale.
As though sleep is not something that will happen to you, but something you are gradually, willingly becoming. Your hands are open at your sides. Your shoulders have found the bed. Your jaw is soft. Your eyes are still. The lamp on the desk casts its warm, low circle, steady, patient, not asking anything of you, just present. A small fixed point of warmth in a dark and quiet room. Tick. You breathe in. Tick. You breathe out. Tick. Your body is heavy and warm and completely held. Tick. The ceiling is the last thing you see, wide and white and still. The dark beam crossing it like the mast of a ship that has found its harbour. Before your eyes close of their own accord. Gently. And finally. Like a book being shut at the end of a chapter, you will be glad to have read. Somewhere downstairs, Margaret puts out the last of the lights. Not all of them. She leaves the small lamp burning in the hallway. She always does. So that anyone who wakes in the night knows where they are. So that the inn is never entirely dark. The cat shifts in its sleep. Its paws move once, dreaming of something soft. The clock keeps its quiet, faithful count.
The rain has stopped now. Completely. The clouds are beginning to separate, somewhere far above the mountain. And through a gap that no one is awake to see, a single star appears. Then another. Then a long, slow river of them. Unhurried, ancient, indifferent to everything except the simple fact of shining. The garden holds the night.